4 new priests today, 4 deacons who will become priests, 3 subdeacons who will become deacons, to join the priests who we are always happy to see with us today, the priests of the society out on the ground, working for the glory of God and the salvation of souls. A number of them are here year by year, and I think I may, on behalf of all of you, thank each of them for their perseverance and for their devotion to the good of your souls, because the devil is prowling around like a lion seeking someone to devour. And Our Lady said in 1973, he is especially today, especially implacable, was I think Our Lady's word, implacable against souls, against consecrated souls, to get them away from and out of the service of God. And each year that the priests are here again to take part in the priestly ordination, it's clear that they are persevering. And if they're here today, it's because they love their priesthood. And they are welcoming the occasion to greet a few more members of their happy band. Amidst the terrible situation surrounding us, one sign of hope, amongst others, is the apparently increasing number of vocations, both in the seminary and in the monasteries, as the convents and monasteries, the sisters as well as the monks and the seminarians. The numbers are again beginning to climb. It's not surprising in this sense that the Catholic tradition, as we may call it, has been at work now for tens of years in the United States in the wake of the Council, and slowly, but I think surely, the true church is rebuilding. None of us says that there is nothing of the true church in what we call the Novus Ordo Church. None of us says that no laity or no priests or no bishops outside of the Society of Pius X keep the Catholic faith. That's ridiculous. But it's difficult. That system, if one may so call it, the Catholic Church cannot be in the hands of the enemy, because the Catholic Church is the Immaculate Bride of Christ. But the system, the churchmen and the system, can fall into the hands of the enemy. God, by a just punishment, has allowed the enemy to penetrate deep into the entrails of the church, and so the great falling away or apostasy continues, and it's worst. It continues to be worst inside the Catholic Church, inside the system. And there is still little to no sign of the leaders of the church, of the leaders of the system, let's say, backtracking or realizing their errors. Some of them are realizing the consequences of their errors. They don't like the effects, but they are apparently unable to go back to the causes. And so they continue to lay down the causes, even though they don't like the effects. And of course the result is the effects keep coming, and they don't seem to be able to understand, or they don't want to understand, or they cannot understand what the real problem at the level of the causes is, what the real causes are. And so, the problem being worst in the church, many of you know the quotation of Archbishop Lefebvre. There were in the 20th century 3 world wars, 1914 to 1918, 1939 to 1945, And thirdly, 1962 to 1965, the dates of the Second Vatican Council. And of these three, as he called them, world wars, the Archbishop used to say, the worst of them was the Second Vatican Council. Because the first two wars were a terrible physical devastation and the death of millions of bodies, but Vatican II was a terrible spiritual devastation and cause or occasion of the loss of millions and millions of souls. The problem being deep inside the church, it flows, of course, out into society. The situation is graver by the day. Dear some deacons and deacons, you've undoubtedly listened to a number of your colleagues in the priesthood telling just how difficult it is for souls, even if they have some grip upon their Catholic faith, the world still has a grip upon many of them. Ideas which have brought about this devastation of the world and of society don't come out of the bloodstream overnight. They're in our bloodstream, they're in the bloodstream of all of us, they fragilize all of us, they make all of us more or less fragile. But, as St. Paul says, where sin did abound, there did grace the more abound. And so, the Lord God has obviously not abandoned His church, and it continues. But amongst the families today, amongst the way things are going, it simply cannot continue for long. The exact dates we don't know, but the families are disintegrating. Within the homes are disintegrating. The people are disintegrating. If there is no home and no family, how can there be children who are human? The children are on a huge scale, more than most of us realize, and more than many of us want to realize. The children are being brutalized and violated and beaten in their own homes. And between husband and wife too, the sanity is disintegrating the same way, same nature, a natural idea of how relations between husband and wife and between parents and children need to be, what the sound lines that need there to be followed are widely lost. Man is in revolt against everything natural. He's revolting against the natural relations between man and woman, between parents and children. And the result is a situation which the police and the state courts cannot handle. The police will be called to intervene in a deadly fight between husband and wife, let's say, or the state is called upon to create foster homes for the children who have in effect lost their home because of what happens there. But there's a limit, the supply of sane foster parents is drying up. As this devastation of home and family continues, there are fewer and fewer remaining of that generation which still understood how the family can work and should work. And that being so, where can the children be sent, even if they're pulled out by law, even if the law intervenes to pull them out of the home that was destroying, of the home in inverted commas that was destroying them? Where can they be sent? Where can they be put? The estate attempts to intervene in between husband and wife. It attempts to arrange things with divorce laws and then with easy divorce or no-fault divorce laws. You and I know that it's against the law of God. In fairness, in some cases at least, the state is trying to do its best. The answer, of course, is that the state is not equipped to come between husband and wife or to come between parents and children. The state is effectively powerless. It may try to pick up the pieces, but it certainly can't put Humpty Dumpty together again. That's not its function. It hasn't got the means. And so, as home and family disintegrate and people disintegrate, society turns into a dis-society. I happened to be passing very briefly through the south of Manhattan the other night, and there were police cars all the time. When people have almost, I exaggerate slightly to say there were police cars on every street corner, that's an exaggeration. But the police were very clearly present. When men follow these modern ideas of revolt and revolt against nature, then society turns into dis-society. And the police and the state do their best, let's say, they do their best, but they can't deal with the situation. That's why when President Truman, president from 1945 to 1952, had on his desk, I believe, a stand or a piece of wood or whatever, which said, "The buck stops here." The dear president was not quite right. The politicians are powerless to deal with the situation as it is. The best of politicians is only a molder of a consensus, the molder of the best possible consensus. The best of politicians is the molder of the best possible consensus, but the state of minds and hearts which he has to deal with are for him a given which he can't change, as even a Napoleon realized. Napoleon was envious of the power of the priest to get into the hearts and minds of men. It's a power he recognized he didn't have. And he molded a consensus, he molded a revolutionary Europe. But, of course, he bequeathed massive problems to his successors. So when the politician, in politics, the buck stops on the president's desk, yes. But in a very real sense, the real buck, so to speak, is beyond the president. It's not something that he can handle. The political problems are always secondary. It's the religious problems which are primary. If the politics today are virtually insoluble, as the most intelligent of politicians will realize, they will admit that it's against their pride, but if they're clear-minded, they will have to admit that they're dealing with a situation that they can't deal with. Then, where does the buck stop? And of course the answer is, the real buck stops with the Catholic priesthood. That's very, very clear. And therefore, my dear young friends, being ordained today, dear colleagues, it's mysterious that the Lord God should send us out like sheep amongst wolves, and then, especially today, that he should seem to be sending out so few sheep amongst so many wolves. The Lord God is mysterious. He goes way above our little minds, our little minds. It's not for us to attempt to plumb the depths of the will of God. It's most certainly for us to do our best, to do what we can, and that's, as Catholic priests, a great deal in the situation in which God allows us to be. One sign of hope in the dear United States, the lack of vocations. There aren't many vocations at this moment in South America, as I know. There aren't that many in Europe at present. If there is an upswing in the United States, then in this respect, for the moment, with the grace of God, the United States seems to be in the lead. Let's see if it lasts, and let's see if it's not picked up and imitated elsewhere. But in any case, it is a sign of hope. And another sign of hope, most certainly, is the number of priests in the system. In other words, priests within the hierarchy of the official church. who have responded to the book published by the Angelus and sent to every single priest in the United States on the official mailing list, 45,000 priests. Mass, where is thy priest? Priest, where is thy mass? As of today, or as of the last few days, no fewer than 350 priests have sent back the card which was in the back of that book, inviting the priests to apply for a kit to help them to start celebrating the Tridentine Mass. 350 out of 45,000, that's still 44,650 that we must pray for. But 350 is a significant number because, of course, each single Tridentine Mass, each single real Mass, which is not, the new Mass can be valid. That has always been the position of the Society of St. Vitus X. It's not automatically invalid. But even when it's valid, the context and surrounding the rite are such as to put the skids under the Mass and put the skids, as one may say, under the graces of the Mass and under the faith of the celebrant and under the Catholic faith of those attending that Mass.